And we're back. Generations talking about my sports generations. I'm Jonathan.
I'm Steve. Hey, everybody. How we doing?
So that last episode was pretty heavy. And but we think that's part of the beauty of sports. And I think both Steve and I really believe that that's what part of the beauty of sports is and why we like it so much because it does bring a lot of different people and places together. And, good, clean competition is super, super fun. But we figured let's have a lighter discussion today. Let's just have a little fun, a little banter around. 2 weeks ago, Steve called Robert Ory a carpetbagger. And that's a great episode. Don't get me wrong. And last week was pretty heavy talking about kind of some of the social changes that took place during sports, because of sports, or in parallel with sports. But today we want to have a little fun. So Steve, you want to take it away?
Yeah, we thought today'd be fun to talk about some of our favorite players. And since this is about generations, I'm going to go first. And since we tend to talk about hoops a lot, I'm going to talk about three or four of my favorite players pretty quickly. But surprising to some of you, one of my favorite Lakers was Wilt. And, Wilt came to the Lakers, I think, in maybe 68 in a big trade. And he came and, everyone heard about him, how great he was. But the thing that I liked about Wilt was in the beginning of the 69 season, the eighth or ninth game, he blew out his knee. He actually blew out his patella tendon. And they're like, yeah, you're done for the rest of the year. Well, Wilt was back in 4 months. I mean, you tell Wilt something, he would do whatever he wanted to. And he's like, I will be back. And he led the Lakers. I remember I went to a playoff game that year. They played Phoenix in the first round of the Western Conference. Phoenix had Connie Hawkins. Phoenix went 3-1, and then Wilt just took over. I think he was getting 25 and 25 and did his thing. So Wilt used to say, "No one roots for Goliath," and it was true until people saw him as more of a human being when he hurt his knee and how hard he worked to come back. So he was a favorite, and I really enjoyed watching him play. I talk about a rim protector. It was just amazing. Wilt was a big favorite. And then, of course, my other favorite, aside from role players, but I remember vividly the day Magic got drafted, 1979. And I think this Pat Riley, but maybe even Paul Westhead. Well, I had a quote about Magic, and they said, when we drafted him, we thought we were getting a show horse, but we were getting a workhorse. And even though Magic was flashy and Magic was, ebullient and Magic was a great talker, Magic was a phenomenal basketball player, and he was a winner, and he wanted to win. Like he said, it's winning time. And I still remember probably the my significant single most basketball play I'll ever remember. 1987 against the Celtics. Lakers down by one, 6 seconds left. Cooper inbounds it to Magic. Magic faces up with McHale, drives and does his baby junior skyhook over McHale, Parrish, and Bird. Lakers win by one. Phenomenal shot. And that's Magic to a T. Magic was a great player, a great guy to watch. Of course, I had other favorites. I like a guy like Michael Cooper, a lockdown defender, things like that. But for basketball, for my generation, I'd say Wilt, Magic, and I was also a big Jerry West fan. All of this was before you were born, Jonathan. Well, not Magic, but certainly Wilt and West.
So my guy, which is going to sound funny because at this point, okay, it's going to be right after the ABA and the NBA merged. And you only got in Sacramento the Sunday, and this is after the regular season. This is basically after Christmas. And when the regular season of NFL is kind of ticked down. But you'd get a Sunday game for basketball on regular television. And that was it. And it was usually one of three teams: Lakers, Celtics, Sixers. That was it. It was one of those three, hardly ever changed. And so, of course, growing up in Sacramento, I had friends that liked the Lakers, and I had friends that, liked Larry Bird and liked the Celtics. And I liked comic books, and I collected comic books. And on the back of almost every single comic book was a Converse ad. And it was this guy dunking the basketball from across the court. Julius Dr. J. Irving. And so he was my favorite guy. And quite frankly, when I was a little kid, 7, 8 years old, so this is the late 70s, I actually barely saw him play. I can barely remember him really playing in those late 70s. And I don't really, really remember him playing until the 83 championship. But he was my favorite player by far. And it was mostly from the myth of just those commercials. And then, of course, they had the Converse commercials on television with Dr. J. So he was my first basketball guy, Dr. J, even though that I missed the greatest part of his career in the ABA. And two, during his career in the NBA, you got to see so little of it because what the television rights were for basketball.
Well, the whole idea of liking someone you couldn't see was really interesting. I remember when the Clippers traded for Ron Harper. So you guys remember Ron Harper? He won a bunch of rings with the Bulls. But Ron Harper was baby Jordan right after Jordan. Ron Harper was this phenomenal player. He played in Cleveland. No one ever saw him. But somehow the Clippers traded for him. And all I'd heard, I'd never seen him play, but I heard this guy, Ron Harper's really good. I remember the first game I saw, there's a fast break early in the game, 3-on-2, and he's on a wing. And one of the Clippers threw it to him. It was a pretty bad pass, and he just reached behind him and grabbed it and went up and dunked in some guy's face. I mean, he was a player. But of course, the Clippers curse, killed him. Before he blew out his knee, he was a phenomenal basketball player. And I like Ron Harper because he's one of these guys that has an injury, comes back, changes his game. He's not a high flyer anymore, but he was a big part of the Bulls' rings. He could guard anybody, long arms, great defender, good rebounder, smart basketball player. So, but yeah, it's funny liking someone that you didn't know. The guy who played with Dr. J in Philly was George McGinnis, and I had the same thing. I remember this huge poster of George McGinnis that says McGinnis plays in Pumas, and I just liked the guy. I never saw him play. The first time I saw him play was the 1976 finals with Portland versus Philadelphia, which had a fight between Maurice Lucas and Daryl Dawkins, and Sixers went up 2-0. Then the Blazers came back and smacked them, and McGinnis had to guard Maurice Lucas, and Luke was 3 or 4 inches taller than him. And McGinnis was like, a power forward who wasn't that big. He was a big, stocky guy. He's probably 6'6" and a half, 6'7", but he couldn't stay with Maurice Lucas, and Lucas just used him. And I remember there were all these stories that, his teammates didn't like George McGinnis and all these things, but I always liked the guy, even though I think I only saw him play 3 or 4 games. It's funny how that works.
It's funny you bring up Ron Harper. So my friend Freddie, just out of the blue, loved the Cavaliers. And this is the mid to late 80s. So Brad Daugherty, Mark Price, Larry Nance, Craig Elo, Ron Harper. And then there was this guy, he kind of went to Cal. He got drafted into baseball and basketball. Oh, that's right. He went to the same high school as we did. Not during our same time, before us. But their backup point guard to Mark Price, KJ, Kevin Johnson.
He was on Cleveland?
He was drafted by Cleveland.
Wow.
And he tells stories of how he could not get on the court. That's how good Mark Price was.
Well, let me tell you my KJ story. So I went to law school at Eugene, Oregon, and I was a big basketball fan, and the Ducks were not very good, but they played at a great, they called it MAC court, for MacArthur Court, and it was loud and crazy. And I had a buddy who went to play at Stanford, and he said that when they played at Mac Court during timeouts, no one could hear what the coach said. The coach would be talking, and it was like it being on a Beatles concert. They just nod their heads like whatever. But anyways, I saw Cal play because I went to almost every basketball game. And Kevin Johnson was like an 18-year-old skinny little freshman. And the thing I remember about him was every time he was not playing, he was biting his nails. And he looked so out of place. But once he had the ball, this guy, I mean, I don't profess to be a scout, and I don't think I've got any X-ray vision, but I watched him play for 20 minutes. I said, this guy's going to be a star in the NBA. He was that good. And the thing I remember about him, he dominated the game, and then Cal was down by 1 with seconds left, and KJ had the ball, and he got trapped. 3 guys were on him. He couldn't get the shot off, and the buzzer ended, and the Ducks won. But Kevin Johnson was a phenomenal college basketball player. I mean, really good.